All right. Hey, Robin, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. How are you? I can't believe it's March 1st.
I know this year is, well, I don't know. I'm happy last year's over, actually, but
Yeah,
with the
me too.
COVID and everything, that's just been dreadful. I'm optimistic that this year is going to be a lot better than,
Well, we can't ever lose hope or faith. I mean, it's just, hopefully we're turning the corner. Johnson and Johnson vaccine was approved and, you got to keep faith that we're rounding the bend.
yes, I hope so too, and we can all get back to our lives. In this business, it's been particularly hard hit uh, with performing artists who I interview numbers of. And they've been just completely shut down. I mean, other people have too, restaurant
Hmm.
owners and small business owners and things. But the performing artists, they're still unable to open, to go back to work, you know?
Yeah, it's just so hard. And a part of the other thing that I do is I'm an artist, and so I get it. All of the events have still been canceled, and you miss that connection to people, but you also miss the artistry that comes from doing your work on an ongoing basis. And when that just comes to a screeching halt, it's difficult. It's difficult emotionally, it's difficult physically, it's difficult financially. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said, there's hope that we're going around the bend and this is going to get better.
Absolutely.
So you're all kinds of stuff. I'm looking at your bio here. Podcast host, a reverend, artist,
Yeah.
coach, and speaker. You know,
Yeah.
what kind of order should we put those in terms of
Gosh,
priority or?
I'm not sure. It depends on the day. I know that there's been certain lessons that I've had to learn throughout my life, and one of them is I'm not happy unless I'm doing more than one thing. I mean, some days it's a little ridiculous doing three or four, but I love the different aspects of what I do, and they all give me a sense of fulfillment and purpose, but in different ways. So, yeah, it's hard. I love to officiate weddings and funerals. That's a much different environment than being at an art show or being a speaker, obviously. But they all are meant to engage with people, and to be able to do that I consider a privilege. And like we were talking before, I was used to speaking at events with people in a group, in an audience, and I miss that. I mean, thank goodness that we have the technology that we do, or you and I wouldn't be able to be here together today. But there is nothing like that in person, in studio, in the same room effect that we just can't do right now.
Well, that's true. And before this pandemic hit, actually, we were looking around for enlarging our studio because right now we just have a small studio that we're not set up to take people in live. But we want
Oh,
to switch to like a full on real type talk show where we could
yeah,
have people in the studio as well as doing virtual like this.
right.
And we just stopped dead in our tracks because we didn't know when we would even be allowed to start doing a show like that.
Yeah, it's
So,
impossible to
yeah,
plan.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a big hold button on that one right now. Hopefully this year we can
Pause.
get back to that. I did want to ask you about a couple of these. Podcast host, what do you talk
Mhm.
about on your podcast?
Well, it's called Curdled Milk. It's kind of a takeoff from my book. I wanted to do a podcast for women, mostly over the age of what I like to call everything's going to be all right. Uh, and I call it curdled milk because sometimes society tells older women that we're aging more like curdled milk, and while men age like fine wine, right? So it's geared towards women and based on all of the things that maybe we are going through. You know, maybe we're in transition, maybe we feel like there's something we really want to do but we haven't done it yet. We talk about current events and how that impacts, you know, our daily lives. We talk about the virus, we talk about politics, but I try to center it around the thoughts and ideas of women. Next week, one of my guests is going to be the director of the Stevens Center, which is an organization here in Omaha who does great work with women who need a safe harbor. Maybe they've gone through addiction issues. Maybe they've been with an abusive partner. So, you know, we're all over the board, but much like you, I imagine, I love hearing the stories of people who are out there doing great things.
Let me just touch back on one of the issues you brought up regarding curdled milk. I have a feeling that that concept of men age gracefully and women just get old, I have a feeling that is probably one of the last remaining male sexist stereotype things in our society. And I have a feeling it comes from babies, or the ability to, you know, to make babies. And women have a definitive timeline on that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it came from. I could be wrong, but it seems to me, because men can, as long as they're firing on all cylinders, they can have babies well into their 70s. But
Yes.
women have
Not that they should.
not that
but
they should.
Can.
I know. What was it? Mick Jagger had one at 74 or 75. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I tell you, I think you're not to interrupt you, but I think you're probably right. I do think that it started a long time ago through the process of evolution and reproduction and all of those things. I also think it has to do with certain stereotypes that several generations grew up with, as far as women weren't in the workforce like men were. Women weren't in the boardrooms. Women weren't CEOs, certainly. And, you know, we got left behind. But also, there's this thing that happens. Women can be our own worst enemy sometimes. In other words, we aren't really good at supporting ourselves or one another, but sometimes we resent the hell out of our partner or people when they're not recognizing what we want and what we need, even though we haven't raised our hand and said, hey, this is it. So as we go through life and life changes, kids grow up, relationships change. You know, sometimes you're laying in bed next to somebody and you don't know who the hell they are anymore.
That does happen, you know.
It does. It does.
Do you think, I had this conversation with another guest that was on, do you think that the measure of a successful relationship is necessarily its longevity?
No, I do not.
Okay. Because I'm still on the fence about that one. I don't know. I've been married for 15 years, and we've had our ups and downs, but, you know, it's comfortable, and I can't imagine going back to being single at this point in my life.
Yeah.
So whether or not the relationship is ideal, I don't think there's any such thing. But,
I don't either.
you know, but again, I mean, I look at my grandparents who were married for 60 some odd years and died a year apart. But there is that argument now that, you know, people who have been married 2-3 times, that when the first or second relationship ended, if it ended amicably, and they just grew apart,
Hmm.
that maybe that's not something to be frowned upon or ashamed of.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that camp. Probably for personal reasons, since I have been married and divorced. But I definitely think, relationships, I think once you subscribe to the fact that all relationships end, they just all do. Sometimes it's through death, unfortunately. Sometimes it's because people evolve and change and grow. And I think what's difficult and the most challenging for people in a relationship is, one, to accept people for exactly who they are and not try to change them. And two, as you evolve and as you change, to be able to grow together and continue to communicate and compromise. And some people navigate through that much more successfully than others. But as a coach, I have clients who have been married a long time and are miserable. And I have clients who aren't married at all and have been in a relationship for a short amount of time and are finding their way because they've lived, right? Life has spun them. They've had experiences and now they're ready for a healthier relationship based on who they are today. They might have gotten married or been in a relationship when they were young and
Right.
the priorities were different. It was all about sex. It was all about that physical connection. And yes, that's an important part of a relationship. But I think as we get older and get more experienced, we learn that other things are just as important as that intimacy.
Well, I agree. And also, I mean, once the honeymoon is over and people start getting real with each other,
Yeah.
it changes the whole dynamic. That's not to say that the sexual aspect of the relationship can't be good or continue to be good for years and years,
Right.
but it does change.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite as ooh la la as it was the first few months, or but it's also gets to a point of understanding your partner, and
Hmm.
it can get better, but this is a big topic, and I'm just looking at the clock now, and
It is.
we're,
Okay.
we're kind of running down on time, and I want to hit on your book before we totally run out of time. So your book is called Miss to Bitch to Ma'am. Can you
Yeah.
give us a 1 minute synopsis of the book?
Well, every woman has a secret. And very often it's that secret that prevents her from getting out of life what she wants most. It doesn't have to be a huge secret, like she was part of a bank robbery, but it might be an unfostered dream. It might be an insecurity. It might be a fear. That those are secrets too. And so, unless or until we're wanting to come to terms with that, we're not going to get to where we want to be. And the book is really stories of women that are very brave and have shared their experiences in going through loss, transition, fear, guilt, abuse, and coming out the other side.
Okay, great. How long has the book been out?
Shoot, I lose track of time, Douglas. I swear I can't tell you what I did. Late last year.
Late last year. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how's it doing?
late last year. Really well, really well.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
it's been great. As we talked about before, the marketing aspects are different. I would have loved to do book signings. I would have loved to have had more of those events that people could come and I could share a chapter or so. But we can't do that. So learning to evolve with the times and get the word out has become a bit of a challenge. But again, it's you never know how, it's the potential is there, and you never know what great idea that you're going to come up with that might have not been a possibility had things remained the way that they were.
Well, true. I hope there is a silver lining in this COVID cloud.
Yeah.
I know that the one thing that has improved is people's ability to use Skype and Zoom and doing more of that. And I think that's positive. I
Yeah.
mean, I think too much of it in lieu of real interpersonal contact may be bad, but there's no reason why we can't improve people's ability to go online. And,
That's right.
so I think that has been a positive aspect. On that note, we have to wrap it up. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. It's rjhesselgesser.com. And I know my last name is intimidating, but it's really not. Hesselgesser.
Well, Robin, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking.